September 1944. The Netherlands. A single bridge over a wide canal becomes the last line of defense. On one side, Allied forces push forward. On the other, a small German garrison waits in silence. No reinforcements are coming. No one expects them to survive. This is the story of the bridge that was never meant to hold. By the late summer of 1944, the Netherlands had become a battlefield of sudden movement and sudden silence. The German front was breaking in the west, but the north and east remained stubbornly occupied. The Allies had advanced faster than expected. They had pushed through France and Belgium with momentum that felt unstoppable. Yet the war was still defined by the geography of Europe, its rivers, canals, bridges, and narrow crossings that could turn an advance into a standstill. The most famous battle of that month was Operation Market Garden. It was designed to bypass the Siegfried Line by capturing bridges in the Netherlands and opening a direct route into Germany. The plan was ambitious and risky. It relied on speed, surprise, and the fragile assumption that a few key bridges would remain intact long enough for Allied forces to cross. In September 1944, the German military was under pressure. Their supply lines were stretched thin. Their troops were exhausted. They were forced to use whatever units they had available. In the Netherlands, this meant a mixture of regular Wehrmacht, SS detachments, and hastily trained local formations. The men who were sent to defend the bridges were not always seasoned soldiers. Some were young. Some were old. Some were ill. But they all shared the same duty: hold the crossing. One small bridge near the town of Hardenberg, or Real Canal crossing in the east, became a focal point for the struggle. It was not part of the famous Market Garden route, but it was crucial in a smaller, quieter way. It was a lifeline for German retreat routes and a potential barrier to Allied movement. If the Allies seized it, they could push deeper into the Dutch interior. If the Germans held it, they could delay the advance and buy time for regrouping. The bridge itself was a narrow structure, built for trains and trucks. It was flanked by a low embankment and protected by a line of trees and reeds. In the early hours of September 1944, the German garrison received orders to hold the crossing at all costs. Their commanders were clear: the bridge must not fall into Allied hands. The men were told they were to delay the enemy, even if it meant death. On the morning of the attack, the bridge looked like a simple piece of engineering. But it had become a symbol of the war's cruel arithmetic. The Germans knew the Allies were approaching. They knew the crossing was the next step in the enemy's advance. They knew the road ahead was already burning. And yet, the men on the bridge did not retreat. They stayed. They prepared. They waited. The civilians in the nearby village were already gone. Those who remained watched from a distance, their faces blank with fear. They had learned to live with war, but they had not learned to understand it. The bridge was no longer a bridge. It was a line drawn in the sand. And the soldiers on both sides were about to discover how fragile survival truly was. The German defenders were a small force. Their numbers were limited. Their ammunition was limited. Their faith in victory was nearly non-existent. Yet they had one advantage: the bridge was narrow, and the canal was deep. Any attack would have to cross the water under fire. By late morning, Allied reconnaissance spotted the position. A company of British infantry, supported by a few armored vehicles, was ordered to secure the crossing. The British commanders believed the Germans were retreating. They believed the bridge might be lightly defended. They were wrong. The first Allied approach was met with silence. The Germans waited. They did not fire immediately. They let the British get closer, and then they struck with sudden violence. Machine gun bursts tore through the air. Mortar rounds landed among the advancing troops. The bridge became a corridor of fire. The British were forced to stop. They took cover behind the embankment. They tried to move sideways, but the canal restricted their movement. Every attempt to advance was met with heavy resistance. The Germans, though outnumbered, held the high ground. Their weapons were positioned with brutal precision. The bridge was the only path forward, and the Germans controlled it. For hours, the battle became a grind of bullets and smoke. The British tried to bring up armored support, but the narrow road made it difficult. The German defenders were not just soldiers, they were engineers, mechanics, and young men pulled from other duties. They fought with the desperate discipline of men who knew their deaths were likely. The Allied commanders faced a choice. They could continue to attack and risk heavy losses, or they could pull back and find another crossing. But time was slipping. Every minute lost meant the Germans could strengthen their position or retreat to another line. The bridge had become a choke point in the Allied advance. The Germans, for their part, were receiving no reinforcements. Their radios were mostly dead. Their supply trucks had been destroyed days earlier. They had no way to resupply ammunition. They had no way to receive orders. They were isolated. Yet they continued to fight. Their commander, a lieutenant who had been moved from another front, kept his men organized. He knew the bridge was the last barrier. He knew the enemy would eventually break through. But he also knew that holding the crossing even for a short time could delay the Allies long enough for other German units to escape. As the day wore on, the fighting became more brutal. The British began to use grenades and close-range tactics. The Germans responded with desperate bayonet charges. The bridge shook with each explosion. The canal water turned dark with debris. The air filled with the sound of men shouting and the relentless crack of rifles. Then the Germans did something unexpected. They began to prepare the bridge for demolition. The lieutenant ordered the charges set. They had only a few minutes to destroy the structure. The goal was not to win. The goal was to deny the enemy the crossing. The Germans had no illusions. They knew they would not survive. But they would not give the bridge away. The Allies sensed the change. They could see the Germans moving along the bridge with purpose. They realized what was happening. They tried to accelerate their attack. They pushed forward with a final, violent effort. The bridge defense was about to reach its turning point. The final assault began as the sun dipped low in the sky. The British troops launched a coordinated push across the bridge. They moved in tight formations, using the embankment for cover. The German defenders were still firing. Their aim was accurate. Their resolve was unbroken. The bridge shook with each explosion. The Germans detonated one charge. A section of the bridge collapsed into the canal. The British soldiers were forced to stop. The narrow crossing became even more restricted. The men had to climb over twisted steel and broken wood. Some fell into the water. Some were pulled out by their comrades. The German defenders had expected this. They had planned for it. They had also prepared a second set of charges. The bridge was becoming a trap. The Allies were moving into the danger zone. The British commanders realized the situation was critical. They ordered a final push. They wanted the bridge before it was too late. The soldiers advanced again, despite the chaos. They were met by machine gun fire at close range. The Germans were now fighting in a state of near ruin. Their numbers were dwindling. Their bodies were scattered along the embankment. The lieutenant, still alive, watched the bridge fall apart. He knew the end was near. He looked at his remaining men. He saw their exhaustion. He saw their fear. He saw their acceptance. He gave the order to detonate the final charges. The explosion was immense. The bridge shattered in a storm of metal and wood. The canal water erupted. The sound echoed through the surrounding fields. The remaining German defenders were thrown from their positions. Some were killed instantly. Others were buried under debris. The British soldiers were thrown back by the blast. Some were wounded. Some were dead. The bridge was destroyed. The crossing was gone. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. But the silence was not peace. It was a pause before the next wave. The British had not crossed. They had not reached their objective. The Germans had delayed them, but at a cost. The surviving Germans were few. They were captured or killed. The lieutenant was found among the ruins, barely alive. He was taken prisoner. His men were gone. The bridge was gone. The defense was over. The Allied advance had been slowed, but not stopped. The war continued. The Netherlands remained occupied for months. The bridge was never rebuilt in the same way. The crossing was forgotten in the larger story of Market Garden and the liberation of Europe. Yet for a moment, a small group of soldiers had stood on a bridge that was never meant to survive. They had held it with their bodies. They had made a choice that did not matter to history, but mattered to the men who lived it. The battle was not remembered. Not in books. Not in memorials. Not in the public memory. It disappeared. The bridge did not become a monument, and the men who defended it did not become symbols, because the war moved forward without pausing to record what happened there. After the smoke cleared, the canal remained, the fields remained, and the road simply ended where the bridge had once stood. The soldiers who fought there were gone, some buried where they fell, others taken away, their names scattered across reports that were never revisited. No official victory was declared, and no defeat was formally remembered, because the crossing had only delayed the inevitable, not changed it. Allied units found other routes, the front shifted, and the broken bridge became just another obstacle cleared by engineers months later, stripped of its meaning. In larger histories, the moment disappeared, absorbed by louder battles and more famous failures. The men who held the bridge had done exactly what they were ordered to do, and then they vanished from the narrative. The nearby village returned to its routines, civilians crossed the canal by new paths, and the sounds of battle were replaced by ordinary silence. With time, even the wreckage was removed, leaving no visible trace of the stand that had once taken place there. What remained was absence, not tragedy, not heroism, just a missing page between events that historians preferred to connect more cleanly. The defense became a footnote that was never written, a pause in the advance that left no mark on maps or memory. The bridge was gone, the defenders were gone, and the reason they stood there faded with them. What survived was only the quiet fact that, for a few hours in 1944, men were sent to hold a crossing they were never meant to leave, and when they did not return, the world continued as if nothing had happened at all. Thank you for watching. New historical stories are published regularly.